We're getting some updates, and we're bringing in some guests to talk a little bit more about the earthquake that's happened in Turkey, sort of provide some perspective. We know that crews have come from all corners of the world to help in this disastrous situation. The earthquake cleanup right now is really more of a recovery, desperation in Syria and Turkey. Massive heaps of rubble are left there, and people are searching for their loved ones, anything that's left of their family or their belongings.
Yeah, now as we've been tracking, winter weather has been threatening the recovery effort. A wintry mix coats the devastation there, adding yet another challenge to a massive effort that's underway.
Bob Kitchen with the International Rescue Committee is leading the earthquake response in Turkey and Syria. He joins us right now. It's been 48 hours. This is a situation where we know at some point it shifts from rescue to recovery. But right now, even with the cold conditions, people can be found alive. We saw this morning as our live reporters are there, they're waiting to see if they can find people underneath this rubble. What's the situation like from your vantage point there, organizing rescue crews?
Thanks. Good to be with you today. So time is running out for the rescue crews. Obviously, with nearly 48 hours since the earthquake, that window of finding people still alive in the sub-zero temperature is really closing. Our focus remains on the many hundreds of thousands of people who have lost their homes, lost their livelihoods, and as you said, lost all of their belongings. We've got staff and clients sleeping in cars, sleeping in mosques, sleeping in schools, trying to find a way to bring their life back together again. So we're really focused on helping them through this really tough time.
This is a rescue effort that had to be mobilized so quickly because of that critical window that you were pointing out. What's it been like for your crews responding to what they've seen there, to a disaster on a scale rarely seen across the world?
Well, let's keep in mind this is an emergency within an emergency. In Syria, there are nearly 16 million people already urgently in need of humanitarian assistance because of the 12 years of war that they've had to survive. In the northwest that has been impacted by this crisis, there's already 2 million people without adequate shelter, 800,000 people just in makeshift shelters and tents that clearly have lost everything yet again. These are people that have been displaced by violence 20 times, even before the last few days. So our focus really now is with sub-zero temperatures, making sure that people have access to clinics to treat injuries and trauma and helping them get back to their lives. And all the while, let's keep in mind that our own staff, the ones who are there to help people save their lives, they themselves have been impacted by this earthquake. So it's doubly serious for everyone involved.
When a person or a rescue first responder, if you will, starts to make preparations, there's so much training that goes into these rescues, into these emergency situations, but sometimes the uncalculated component of weather can really put a wrinkle in it. Instead of coming in with the first responders who really can come in and take control, they're also at the mercy of some of these conditions. I think that is something that's unique, especially for this particular devastating earthquake.
Yeah, for sure. And this is within a region. I was listening into your previous section about averages of weather. This is within a region that rarely has sub-zero temperatures, rarely has snow. So roads are treacherous. People aren't used to driving in the snow. People aren't they're not equipped to survive this type of weather. Even before they lost access to their homes and their offices, had their cars crushed. So it is an unusual challenge in a very challenging region already.
It's an unfortunate situation. We really do appreciate the update here. We know that the International Rescue Committee does such good work around the world, and we know that the best efforts are being put forward. We'll stay tuned for the updates, and we appreciate the time today here on Fox Weather. Thank you so much for being with us, Bob Kitchen.
Thank you.
I'm Amy Freeze. Welcome to Fox Weather's YouTube page. We have more great videos on the way, so make sure to subscribe to stay updated on all things weather.